Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined today by Denny Carter, Kyle Dvorchak, and Eric Froton. It is our final show before the draft, which we have been preparing for 17 years. And some would say we've maybe been taking the prep a little too far. We're doing pre-draft profiles for most of the players we expect to be drafted. You'll be able to find all of those up on the site this weekend. And Kyle informs he's done 4 specialists, but every specialist has a trait in common. What is that, Kyle?
All the specialists are from the Big Ten, and this isn't like my favorite specialist. This is like going around different, draft sources and like who we expect to get drafted. Because I'm not blurbing the long snapper who the Patriots. I mean, they're going to sign 9 of them, but the Patriots long snapper that they sign as a UDFA, I'm not blurbing that guy. But if someone gets drafted in the 5th round, I do care to know a little bit about him. All the specialists are from the Big Ten, and that feels like not coincidence, right? It feels like Big Ten.
They're all from Iowa specifically. Iowa's 3 kickers getting drafted.
I mean, it makes sense to me. I listen. I'm not a huge college watcher, but I've never seen a touchdown scored in a Big Ten game.
No.
So
other than Ohio State,
it's a lot of punting.
Yeah, Ohio State's the only team that's ever scored a Big Ten touchdown, especially since the expansion. No team has ever scored a touchdown against Ohio State in the Big Ten. So that is rather. I forgot to say what we're talking about. By the way, we're talking about final draft news. More Will Levis rumors with the Bills maybe taking a receiver in the 1st round. We're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers for the 79th time this offseason. And boy, he had a really inspiring welcome press conference to the Jets.
Wow.
Where he said, "I'm not a savior," which fair, but also
it could be news to the entire Jets organization.
Yeah, that is news to the Jets,
who have for 3 months said he is our savior.
And then we're going to go around the horn where each of Eric, Kyle, and Denny are going to give just some predictions or some want-tos for the draft. They're all going to make like, I don't know, bold predictions, not really. They're all going to make a prediction. They're all going to talk about a fit they want to see and then a prospect fit they don't want to see. Do any of us want to even see Will Levis in the NFL? That's the first thing we're going to talk about.
Yeah, like I want to see Will Levis. Like I might need to put down a 6-pack, 3 6-packs to watch Will Levis play, but like he should be fun. And let's not dig too deep into what that means analytically, but like he's the type of dude I want to see play football.
Well, he's old enough to rent a car, so he will be able to like take the other rookies out in his car to like the team lunches and stuff that they're going to have. But the latest Will Levis news: longtime Texans beat writer and observer John McClain, who has been known to get very, very angry at times about the Texans, and has been very right about the Texans many times. Has been wrong occasionally. Apparently, said in a radio interview, "quote: the Texans have no indecision whatsoever. Those are national media reports. The Texans know what they are going to do. They've just put a tight lid on it. With the 2nd pick, I have them taking Will Levis in my final mock draft." So John McClain, Mr. Texans, expects Will Levis to go to Houston. Eric, I see you looking very serious and nodding. Is this the deliverance we've all hoped for? And like, what do we even make of Will Levis to the Texans? Like, they've been kind of getting away from doing stuff like this. Now they're going to lean into their Texans essence. Can this work? Will this work?
Well, my first question for you, Pat, is did you hear this particular press conference? And 2, did John McClain say something to the effect of "welcome to the party, pal, and start dancing a jig"?
No, he did not. And
okay, well, we're not going to have a Die Hard reference. You didn't think you were getting one, but that's why I'm here. Okay, so
I've seen Die Hard like 4 times, and I still didn't get the reference. Well,
that's okay. I know the audience gets it. That's
Eric. The references you could have made to Die Hard would have gotten the show canceled. You couldn't say the things that I remember from that movie, specifically one line.
Only 80s kids will remember.
That's right.
Well, 80s kids for Kyle, who is a 2080s kid.
Fair enough. Well, I'm sorry I got off track here. We do have an actual question, and it does pertain to Mr. Will Levis, of course. Now, as Kyle alluded to, I'm very excited to see Will Levis because we need more quarterbacks who don't wear sleeves when they're out there on the field. And we know, looking at his physique, Will Levis will never be photographed on a practice field with sleeves on. So That's a really important thing. And, Houston's hot. So it's going to be a high dew point.
Here it's
that's going to
muggy.
help him. Yeah. If he goes to Houston, that's going to really help his performance, I think. That being said, I don't think that happens. My final mock draft, I went with CJ Stroud. I am staying the course. It has been a long, arduous process, but here we are on the eve of the draft. And while I understand, the physical traits that we're seeing from Will Levis, I do think that decision-making wise, he had a lot to overcome, in terms of what he did last year. The points in favor of him, 2021, when he had a much more accomplished offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, who was with the Rams, is now back at Kentucky after the failed Rick Scangarello.
Not
experiment.
weird at all what happened there with Liam Cohen.
Not weird at all. No, it was even worse when Scangarello tried out there for an offense. So, you can look at that 2021 tape and point to optimism in the way he played, but a 7-13 big time throw to turnover worthy play rate last year is obviously concerning. I have him going to the Colts. I think he is so Irsay. He is just pure Irsay to me.
He is pure uncut Irsay.
Thank you. So I'm going with Stroud at that 2 pick.
Doesn't this kind of reek of the Texans saying basically, hey Colts, we're gonna do it.
Also through like a favored mouthpiece, like John McClain is retired, and all of a sudden he's coming out for one last job, one last information launder.
I'm too old.
One last Die Hard.
Yeah, exactly. John McClain, by the way, is an actor who's been in several films. This is not a joke.
What?
He worked for the Houston Chronicle for like 40 or 50 years, and is also like a bit actor. Look up his IMDb. He was in the James Franco classic Spring Breakers.
What?
This is not a joke. This is actually not
I know
a joke.
that movie.
Yeah.
Was that the riffraff version of James Franco?
That's where James Franco, plagiarized Riff Raff's entire persona.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, Denny. Though we got sidetracked.
I mean, the Colts.
A Riff Raff reference on this show? A Riff Raff reference. I'm sorry to keep us sidetracked, but
Four Horsemen Riff Raff.
The Zoomers might not even know who Riff Raff is, but you go, Denny.
What was I saying? Yes, the Colts. The Colts. They want their guy. They want Will Levis, and I think the Texans desperately want to get out of that spot, I guess. And
it does. I for some reason have been forgetting all day that that's obviously what this is.
Yeah,
and he was known for being close to Cal McNair, I believe, John McClain, and so it's definitely get the word out. We're actually taking the quarterback. And make the Texans or the Colts bleep their pants.
It is one last job.
It is seriously one last information launder for John McClain, maybe.
It's hard work being a bag man.
What, Eric?
It's hard work being a bag man.
It is. And I mean, and no offense to John McClain if this actually ends up being correct. And it was the truth all along.
No way, man.
It does feel very, very indie. I mean, Kyle, you've been following this as closely as Eric, as closely as anyone. What is your best gut feel on April 26th? What team Will Levis will be drafted by on the evening of April 27th?
I think it's going to. I think you guys are thinking about this in the way that us fantasy bros or analytically minded somewhere in that vein are like, oh, Stroud's numbers are great. Will Levis's numbers, in fact, they're not great. They're quite poor for a guy who was looking like he could go second overall, to sugarcoat it, frankly. But sportsbooks seem convinced that if a quarterback is going second, it's probably Will Levis, like FanDuel Sportsbook, who's been pretty responsive to the market in the draft, in the lead up to the draft, has him plus 190, just shy of Tyree Wilson, plus 150, and then all the way down at plus 550 is CJ Stroud. So they're not sold on Will Levis being at 2, but they are more sold that if a quarterback is 2, it is Will Levis. And I get that the Texans have had some regime turnover and obviously have a whole new coaching staff, but would it shock me if the Texans made what we think wasn't the most sound analytically decision? Of course not. And there are redeeming qualities to Will Levis's game. He's a really good athlete. He's got a good arm.
Kidding aside, we have focused a lot on the negatives on Will Levis on the show. So yeah, tell us some of the positives.
Yeah, I mean, he is a good athlete. He's got a strong arm. I think mechanically, he's not terrible. They saw it at his pro day. He actually has a pretty strong throwing motion at times. It's just, I think, decision making leaves a lot to be desired. Yeah, makes a lot of mistakes. But I think you could convince yourself that there's a way to clean that up. I think Connor Rodgers comped him to the prospect that was Josh Allen, and like that prospect, which was not a great prospect, but it had a lot of potential, and you can see how that potential manifests in like real gains in the NFL with the real Josh Allen we have in the year of our Lord 2023. Now, bridging that gap is a big one. But like I understand why they like the upside of his profile. I would go Stroud, and I wouldn't even second question it. I would run up to the podium and take Stroud at 2. But the markets think differently, and I'm not gonna like be so bullish on my own opinion of Stroud that I'm willing to bet against Will Levis if a quarterback goes at 2, which isn't even a guarantee. I'm not willing to bet against Levis being the guy. I think if it is a quarterback at 2, he's the name we'll hear called.
Eric, I'll give you the final word on Will Levis because it looks like you want to say something. But just I do wonder how like efficient these betting markets really are, because it seems like they're like reacting to like totally anonymous like Reddit posts.
A little bit.
Like they seem like these markets would be very, very easy to manipulate. Like they're still kind of like a little too in their infancy. And I do think like the Josh Allen thing is the only reason Will Levis is even being talked about in the top 5. Like Josh Allen like gave teams like license for like at least the next 20 years now to keep taking this kind of player, even though like it works like 1 out of 20 times. And like Josh Allen was basically the one time. Teams like, oh, I mean, no one ever wants us to take these guys, but what about Josh Allen, huh? But you didn't think about that. Bet you didn't think about that. Like, yeah, we've been talking about that for like 20 minutes. We did think about that. But and then they take him and he's a bust. But Eric, what do you want to say?
I think it's so hard because when you say Josh Allen and you say prospect Josh Allen, and it's reasonable. It's not an unreasonable comp, and obviously I respect Connor a great deal. But if I were to go with one, I think he's more Carson Wentz than he is.
That's
Josh
honestly
Allen.
A beautiful comp, man. That's
like that's what I see. And I had just seen on the Twitter that Pete Prisco, I believe, was talking about how, Josh Allen didn't have any receivers to throw with, and it's the same thing with Will Levis. I'm like, this guy has never watched Kentucky football, has he? Well, that's my part. I'm the college guy, so let me tell you something. Wan'Dale Robinson, he's not better than the guys that Josh Allen was thrown to at Wyoming in the freaking WAC? Okay, good luck. All right, you know what you're talking about. Berrien Brown and Dane Key are 2 high 4-star wide receivers this year that he was throwing to. There is no shortage of talent in that wide receiver room. They transferred in Virginia Tech, Travion Robinson, who was an accomplished slot receiver, to take over for Wan'Dale. There's no problem with the weapons that he had over there at Kentucky. So I don't want to hear that. I have concerns about Will Levis. Carson Wentz, lock it up.
Real quick, Kyle, before we give you the final word, too, like Josh Allen, I do think there's actually not much comparison between them as prospects. Like Josh Allen, like say what you will, he was like maybe the biggest arm of any prospect like the past 10 years. And like Will Levis does not have that. And Josh Allen basically like Cam Newton level athleticism. I don't think anyone really thinks Will Levis. By the way, Eric, why didn't Levis run last year? Like, why did he stop scoring touchdowns? What was the deal with that?
Offensive coordinator stunk. Rick Scangarello, as I kind of alluded to, there's all kinds of turnover when you're talking about coaching staffs at college, even more so than the pros. And when you have a guy like Mark Stoops, who's the head coach of Kentucky, who is a defense-oriented coach, he's going to the guys who come in as their OCs run the entire system. So it's not a case where the offensive coordinator is coming into Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, where there's an established structure of what he likes to do, and you can fit within that model. It's a whole new system that comes in. And Scangarello went and it was a one and done because he really wasn't ready conceptually to run an offense in college.
Kyle, final word on Will Levis.
Final word, when you were talking about like the Cam Newton level athleticism, that's like you think of more Anthony Richardson, which makes sense. I was just reading Connor Rodgers comps. He had Anthony Richardson comp to Josh Allen. I've also seen the Will Levis Allen comparison, but like I actually think it makes more sense to give Richardson that because it is that level of athleticism. Whereas like Levis is a good athlete. He's a really good athlete. But he's not like a superhero level athlete like Cam was or like Richardson enters the league. He is more of a good athlete with still like the same level of concerning accuracy issues as someone like Richardson. And that's really the problem is like, I don't know if he's going to be otherworldly like Lamar. He's not. I don't think he is going to be Lamar, Jalen Hurts, even really Josh Allen level of rushing production, but he still has the flaws that we saw Josh Allen come with, which makes sense as to the actual correct comp. Now that I'm reading this, is Connor Rodgers comped him to Jordan Love, who has not seen the field in now 3 years, right? Which is a concern.
Denny is claiming the final word on Will Levis.
I refuse to not get the final word here. No, the thing is with the Carson Wentz, comp. I'm not the big college guy. I'm not grinding a lot of film, but I've seen Carson Wentz play, and I think that there is a lot of Will Levis there. I wanted to make fun. I wanted to say, well, hey, look at the Colts tried it once, and now they're back for more. But and then I reached way back in my memory, all the way back to 2017. And I remember that Carson Wentz was once actually very good. In 2017, he was second behind only Tom Brady in adjusted EPA per dropback. So, he could be good.
Wentz is kind of a what might have been, which people forget since he's become a caricature. He's like a what might have been if he had not torn his ACL.
Right, that's right.
And a career-altering moment for Carson Wentz.
Well,
the Athletics
everyone else gets over ACLs in
not everyone.
6 months.
Yeah,
but Carson Wentz can't. Oh.
Not everyone. Not everyone gets like alien grade plutonium inserted into their knee like Adrian Peterson did, and that they found at an old CCCP site that like no one had touched for 40 years, and it happened to just make his knee the strongest on planet Earth. That's happened for everybody. I gotta just stop with this riff because it's going nowhere. The Athletics. Joe Buscaglia, a friend of this show, he was on last summer, believes the Buffalo Bills will take a wide receiver in the first round. Anyone have? I'll start with Denny, and if you don't, you can pass the baton. Is there a receiver you would like to see the Bills take? Joe Buscaglia is like the authority on the Bills. Like he wouldn't report this like if he didn't have something concrete. That doesn't mean it will happen. Things change. The Bills could change their mind on draft night. But if the Bills do take a receiver in round 1, Denny, who would you like to see end up in Buffalo?
I mean, I guess it would probably be too early. I mentioned on the last show that Peter King has Josh Downs going to Buffalo, and I think that's like a nice easy fit into an offense that is in desperate need of a slot receiver, right? And Josh Downs ran most of his routes and saw most of his targets from the slot in college. They got rid of Isaiah McKenzie, who ends up not being all that good. They have Deontay Hardy, who may or may not play some slot, but they have the outside covered. You need someone on the inside. That makes sense to me, but I mean, am I way off in saying that Josh Downs is going to go that high in this draft? He would have to go before several receivers that are probably graded well above him, right?
No, he could go. I think in one of my in my first mock draft, I had him going to the Eagles, which I thought was like a analytically sound move. And we've been hailing them as that type of team, though they do tend to build in the trenches. But like, I think there's a very strong argument to make him the wide receiver 5. And I think there's a pretty good bet that 4 receivers go. So he's right on that fringe of does he go at 35, 37, or does he go 27, 8, 9 or whatever? And that would line up with the number of receiver he is. Because I expect there to be a pretty strong push for receivers to go from picks like 20 to 25 or 6 and kind of capping off around the Bills. And he makes sense. It's just what kind of style do the Bills want to play? Do they finally want to give Josh Allen like easy underneath yak type of player? Or like if Quentin Johnson fell to them, would they be like, nah, let's let Josh Allen keep doing that thing where he just plays complete to the wall. Let's go 50-50 balls, 12 ADOT type of player. And I think like he's really good at that. But let's see him throw a lot more over the middle. Get some guys who do the heavy lifting for him so he doesn't have to be Superman at all times. And Downs would be like the perfect type of player to fill that role.
And plus, it's also the kind of receiver the Bills really want and need. They want like this slot guy. They've been trying with like different people over the past few years. And Cole Beasley wasn't quite it. Isaiah McKenzie wasn't quite it. Josh Downs could be it, but I don't know, Eric, a slot only 171-pound guy in the first round. I don't know. What do you think? Who do you think the Bills' target might be if they take a receiver?
Yeah, well, first off, you're talking about Downs, as you mentioned, 171 pounds, 5'10", 5'11". This is a relatively new phenomenon in the first round. You had Devontae Smith and his freakishly long arms, and he was in the 172 range, and that was kind of an outlier 2 years ago. We've seen that work out just fine, and I think it based on the rankings, you see these receivers, Addison, Downs, Flowers, all, 3 of the consensus top 5 on the sub 180 side. So, teams are not as averse to drafting these smaller receivers because separation ability is what is so valued right now. It's just creating the active space. And as you talk about with Buffalo, a guy that I really liked in college at Boise State, Khalil Shakir, they drafted, I believe, in the 5th round last year. And you saw him get more reps in the playoffs. I thought he was pretty darn good. When he was given the opportunity, he was a rookie. I don't know if that's something, that he can continue to build upon, but I do like Shakir. I guess my question for you guys is with, their current receiving group, right? We know they got Diggs. The Archangel, Gabriel Davis. We all wanted it to happen. Everyone's been wanting it to happen. But, the UCF guy, it doesn't appear to be a fit. Personally, while I do like Downs and I have him as my wide receiver 7, and sure, if they want that pure slot only, who's dynamic and give him the Edelman, Welker, etc., sort of an advantage, great. If they want a guy who can play slot, but can also go and flex out wide when you need to. You can move him around the formation. He's proven the ability to go deep and make tough catches at the, downfield at the catch point, and is the most decorated high school receiver in the history of mankind, none other than Marvin Mims. So I think Mims is, in terms of skill set, in terms of what he brings to the table, he's going to bring a long threat out of the slot that I don't think you're going to get out of Downs. But that's just my personal preference on what I do there.
I would love that. I mean, I would be obsessed if with Mims going to Buffalo. I think he would immediately become the number 2 option behind Diggs. I don't think Gabriel Davis could keep up with him.
Oh, Gabe's ankle is healed. I bet you hadn't thought of that.
I hadn't. I forgot.
Bet you hadn't thought of that.
Mims is the guy who, I was going through my team needs and prospect fits list. And every time I wrote up receiver, I was like, just take Mims. He's just the best value by far because he was so incredibly productive at such a young age and just has such explosive ability that I ranked him as my dynasty wide receiver 5. I just I think generally the NFL is maybe undervaluing him, but it's also hard to get a read on what the NFL thinks of some of these players who could go early day 2 or slip late day 3 or late 3rd round or even in the 4th. But he's a guy who just every time I saw that a team had a need at receiver, I was like, you should take Mims. This is a guy you are probably going to want to have at the next level. And yeah, he has the speed and deep ability, but still while playing in a different style than someone like Gabe that I'd love to see match up with someone like Josh Allen.
Sure. Mims. And on a per target basis, you got to remember with Mims, he was playing at Oklahoma for his first all 3 of his years, but Lincoln Riley was there. And what happened to Mims was he spreads the ball around because he wants to make sure he gets all his talent, everybody gets their share, and it's spread around. So that's what happened the first 2 years with Mims, where he barely cracked 700 yards, even though his efficiency was outrageous. That's exactly what happened to Jordan Addison when he went to USC. You saw his numbers go from 1,300 yards and a Biletnikoff season in 21 to 2022 being, good, but they were getting him a lot of manufactured touches if you watch his game films, So that's something that I think is a factor that you have to kind of quantify with Mims, where in terms of a per target basis, nobody was more explosive. 16.2% of his receptions the last 2 years went for 40 plus yards. 40, not 20, 40. We're talking about a bomb thrower. And not just that, yards per target, the last 2 years, 13.5 yards per target, number 1 in the country. The guy can do it. Runs a 4.38. Everybody thought he was going to be at the 4.5 at a combine. Give him to me.
I'm just suspicious why the NFL doesn't seem to like him as much as we do. He seems like
I agree with that.
Next Rotoviz All-Star to be like a 4th round pick of the Bucks, who then doesn't do anything.
And it is one thing where
it looks unassailable on paper, though. It really does look unassailable on paper.
These speedy slot guys do get some benefit of playing these spread offenses where they're facing off against the team's 2nd or 3rd corner who's playing in the slot, or a linebacker has to cover them.
You're saying a non-player facing off against an equipment manager. like at Mississippi State or whatever.
I mean, based on the Big 12 defenses, that might be the type of player they're playing against, because Big 12 scores a suspicious amount of points. I think we need to get some sort of government body to look into how many points are scored there. But like,
Guys,
he does get
Big
some
12 slander. Don't be doing this in front of me. Don't be making me bring out Baylor and Iowa State stats here, guys, because they played a lot slower this year than you thought. Texas, incredible run defense. I know you see the TCU box scores, but trust me, the Big 12's defense is a lot better than you think it is. It's come a long way. I know.
So what you're saying, the Big 12 is boring now, is what you're saying.
I'm not saying boring, but when Texas and Oklahoma hit the road, there go the big offenses, and we'll see what happens.
Before we get to our draft predictions and fits, we have one more piece of news that, frankly, none of us want to talk about, but a long national nightmare has ended. Aaron Rodgers has been traded from the Green Bay Packers to the New York Football Jets. It has officially happened. He's had his press conference. He just seemed absolutely thrilled to be there, and like he just can't wait to cash some paychecks from the New York Jets. And he is a Jet. We've been joking about it. Everyone's just wanting this to be over. It's a massive, massive, massive improvement. Even if Aaron Rodgers kind of remains in his diminished state that he was in last year, it's still a massive improvement for the Jets. And Denny, I'll just ask, how high does this take Garrett Wilson? Who was flirting with wide receiver one relevance with Zach Wilson and Mike White. So what happens with Garrett Wilson with Aaron Rodgers?
Right. I mean, I think Garrett Wilson is a wide receiver too with anybody but Zach Wilson, pretty much. I mean, just a serviceable quarterback. And, you know, at this point in his career, Rodgers is above serviceable. I mean, maybe not a lot, but he's an upgrade. So, yeah, I think Garrett Wilson is probably going to be drafted as a wide receiver too. I guess he could get a lot of steam in the summer and maybe get into that like top 10 or 12 receivers off the board. Somewhat understandable, but I would be a little bit cautious there. But yeah, I mean, with Flacco, with Mike White, with anybody not named Zach
Chris
Wilson, Garrett Wilson, me, I was under.
Yeah.
I
Denny Carter. I was out there. Everyone makes fun of the Thursday night games. You were out there for one of the Saturday games that no one really watches late in the season.
No one talks about that, but Garrett Wilson caught 11 passes in that game. Anyway.
Yeah, he caught 11 passes for 87 yards.
So yeah, I don't think that he's going to be like outrageously productive, but I think that he's on a really good path to being a nice safe pick in fantasy drafts.
Kyle, who do you think will benefit the second most in the Jets receiver core, or skill core, I should say, after Garrett Wilson, who seems to be clearly the biggest beneficiary? Because we don't even quite know like what the Jets receiver core is going to look like. Corey Davis could be traded this weekend. Who do you think is sees the most second most benefit after Garrett Wilson?
I think like you can make an argument for someone like Mecole Hardman. I'm going to go with Breece Hall, right? Because like he is going to it seems like unlike someone like Javonte Williams, his recovery, no one is really batting an eye about. He should probably be back at full speed, in no time. And at that point, we know he was on an offense that was like at its best mediocre and at its worst, i.e. with Zach Wilson completely dysfunctional. It didn't matter. He was still incredible. He was still a great pass catcher, was still a strong runner. Like, just let this dude get near the goal line. Like, he can put up 1,600 yards from scrimmage, but we also need part of his repertoire, which is kind of out of his control, is for his offense to put up points. And even at their best last year, they were average or probably below average at putting up points, just getting him in scoring opportunities. So I'm going to say Breece Hall on an offense that is like, even just put them at 16th, dead in the middle among teams just in scoring points, like, yards per play. On that type of offense, like he could be like he should be a top 10 running back. He could push for like top 5, depending on how his role pans out. So I'm going to say Breece Hall, because I think he's easily the most talented, best role outside of someone like Garrett Wilson, who, like, as far as like controlling for position, he might be as talented as.
Should we let the college guy say anything about the Jets and the pros, Eric?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, if you want to talk about which offensive player is going to benefit, I mean, obviously Garrett Wilson, but hey, Robert Tonyan was made into a relevant fantasy player by Aaron Rodgers last time I checked. So he's not afraid to throw the tight ends. You could get a little Jeremy Ruckert action maybe way down the board. Who knows? I mean, who else would it be? I mean, do they have another option for?
I mean, I don't know. Could he mind meld with Elijah Moore, or is he going to get traded? Who's more likely to get traded, Corey Davis or Elijah Moore?
Probably more.
Corey Davis. He's even still like a cut candidate.
Yeah, I thought he was still a cut candidate, but that's not good when you could both credibly answer that they're the most likely trade candidate. That doesn't seem good. I'm trying to not even remember that Mecole Hardman is on the Jets. But
Wait. Elijah Moore. I'm sorry. Elijah Moore traded to the Browns.
Was he traded? Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah, he was part of the second or second, third.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Like pick 50 for pick 70.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yep. He's
the tight end we're looking for.
No. You guys are wrong. He's been traded to the Browns. Elijah Moore. He's been traded to the Browns. You guys were wrong. He's not on the Jets anymore.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We were wrong. I apologize for us being wrong about that.
I actually did completely forget that they finally traded him. When was that? Was that during free agency?
Dude, I'm a college guy. I figured I was just wrong. I must have missed it.
It happened in 2012.
All right. Well, yeah. You live, you learn. I don't know.
The tight end we're looking for, though, could be CJ Uzomah, who's pretty out there and running routes.
Is he still on the Jets? Oh my God.
Yeah. He's out there and he runs routes. You know what he does? He's out there. He's on the field. You look at the field and he's there. You see the field, he's on the field. And that's also that's kind of what Robert Tonyan did, right? Like we saw whenever Aaron regressed, oh boy, did that hit Robert Tonyan, right? And maybe it was also the injury, right? But I don't think Robert Tonyan was, as Froton pointed out, he was a guy, he did his role. And when you're playing with peak Aaron Rodgers, a guy who does his job can put up a lot of touchdowns. And Uzomah is the most a guy who does his job player in the NFL.
Yes, he is.
Well, you know who's still in the Jets, by the way, is Kenny Uboa. No time like the present.
Come on.
No time like the present.
Pat, are you sure he's still? Do you know that?
I actually am sure he's still on the Jets. That one I do know. Kenny Uboa is on that 90-man roster.
Your family's listening.
He's just waiting for greatness. Waiting for greatness from Aaron Rodgers. So, man, Elijah Moore on the Browns. Wow. Man, long off season. Tell you that. Long off season. Long first
find out who Alan Lazard plays for.
Yeah, long first segment. We'll be right back after this with some predictions, some takes for the draft. You name it. We'll be right back after this. Every season is draft season. Get your Rotoworld Draft Guide bundle today and dominate your football, baseball, and basketball drafts. It's packed with profiles, rankings, and projections. Order today and get all 3 Rotoworld Draft Guides for the price of 2. Plus, use promo code BARRY and save an extra 20% off at checkout. And don't forget, download the Rotoworld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today. I was sitting here the whole time I was reading both those promos and trying to remember what team Alan Lazard is on. Is it the Jets?
Yeah, that's why I mean that.
Yeah, Pat.
Man, what a bleak roster. I mean,
But
Alan
to
Lazard
confess-
and Mecole Hardman, man, oh my God.
To confess, I could have made that joke very early in the Jets conversation. I didn't think of it until much later in the conversation about the Jets.
Oh man, just why? We're the up and coming team. You know what it's time to do? Sign Alan Lazard and Mecole Hardman.
Obviously, Lazard at least. They were trying to court? Taking Hackett. Who do you ? They are the team that had to make exceptions for guys coaching or otherwise who are Lazard's fine. He's he was good against man coverage.
At least the Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah, at least the Nathaniel Hackett bait worked for someone.
It's true. Yeah,
did work for the Jets. Second time was the charm.
Finally worked. Yes, you're right. You're right about that. Hey, we're on a roll now. Rodgers' next team is going to do the same thing.
They are.
Lazard plays the most inline snaps of any receiver. Do with that information what you want. I have no clue as to its utility, but he plays more like a tight end than any other receiver, and that's pretty neat.
Because he is basically functionally a tight end. He is a tight end, Alan Lazard.
What I really like about our friend there, Mecole Hardman, is I can repurpose the Craig Kilborn Arvydas Sabonis thing, where he's not my Vitas, he's not your Vitas, he's our Vitas. With Mecole, he's not I Cole, He's not you, Cole. He's me, Cole. So I like. That's what I really like about Mecole.
One thing about Froton, he knows how to appeal to the Zoomers. You know, he just draws them in. He just draws them the kids.
The Zoomers is honestly their loss not seeing the Late Late Show with Craig Kilborn, or perhaps the Daily Show, or perhaps Sports Center,
or Arvidas, or Domantas Sabonis' dad,
or perhaps old
TV.
School
TV, really. I don't think Kyle have you ever watched TV?
Yeah, he actually has never seen a television. Have you ever seen a non-high definition television, Kyle?
I have technically, but like, do I have confident memories of it? That's a more up and down situation.
Denny, Froton, and I are all from the era. I mean, we're getting full only 80s kids remember, where you used to have to hit the side of your television to get the reception to be better.
Yep.
That was me growing up. I just hit it, and then it inexplicably always worked. I have no idea
how did it
how
always
that
work.
I actually don't know.
Well, so my son, who's 10, saw an old school TV once, like 3 weeks ago, with the big back on it, you know, and
he was CRT.
And he's like, he like tugs on my shirt, and I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" He was like, "Dad, what's wrong with that TV?" Like the TV had a disease. Yeah,
it's got a hump on it. Is it pregnant?
Tell your kid that
baby TV.
There was a time in the 1990s where every elderly person owned a TV that was just like a giant like chest, you know?
Yes.
Or like, you know, like it was what would you even? It was like I forget what do you call the thing you put clothes in?
Oh, like a dresser.
Like they're like giant dressers.
It wasn't a giant dresser. My grandparents had one. I had to go up to the TV to change the channel. They didn't have a remote.
Yeah. They will never know our pain.
Fortunately, I had a more advanced version where you had a cord that attached to the TV with a little tray of buttons that you could.
Okay, this is a bit. He's doing a bit now. I actually don't. I joke about understanding you guys' references sometimes. This one I don't.
That's real. That happened. That's a real thing. Scientific Atlanta back in the day.
Man, it's good company. My uncle worked there. By the way, Google Virtual Boy Zoomers. But we've got to move on to the show, to the NFL draft. We're going to talk about each of Kyle, Eric, and Denny are going to list like a fit they really want to see in the draft, a fit they don't want to see, and then a prediction. We'll start positive with the fits we do want to see. We'll start with Denny Carter. What do you want to see? Which prospect do you want to see end up where on draft weekend, Denny?
Yeah. So this is not me advocating for this to happen, but I think it would be cool for fantasy. Pretty much. That was kind of my criteria here. Dolphins drafting Jahmyr Gibbs. And I say that because, you know, Gibbs is good, first of all. And we've been through that. I do have a few little nuggets here. Gibbs's yards per route run was among the highest, and his career yards per route run was among the highest in recent college history. He was fourth in yards per route run last season among all college backs, 80th percentile breakaway percentage. Anyway, the Dolphins were actually like pretty efficient on the ground last year, despite having Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson as their primary rushers. They were 13th in EPA per rush on the season and 10th in EPA per rush in the second half of the season. That was when Tua was mostly back in the lineup after his concussion issues early in the season. So I don't think that Jahmyr Gibbs profiles as a guy who's going to come in and get 20 carries a game. But I also don't think he's the kind of fantasy producer who will require 20 touches in a game. And we've seen that happen with other backs where, I'm not comparing him to Alvin Kamara, but prime Alvin Kamara would get 7 carries in a game and score 25 fantasy points. So I would love to see a primary, really electric back in that Mike McDaniel system. I think it'd be cool for fantasy.
Yeah, we're now in a league that knows what to do with the Jahmyr Gibbs. We're even like 10 years ago, like just going back to the Duke Johnson days, they didn't know how to use these guys. Like, what the hell is like? They get out the manual, like it doesn't say you never had 1,000 yards in college. It doesn't say what to do with this kind of guy. And now they at least know what to do with like an Alvin Kamara, with an Austin Eckler, where you can have more faith because he was never a bell cow in college, doesn't ever profile as a bell cow in the NFL, but you can have faith that they actually will produce now, that they actually will get used in ways that are especially beneficial in PPR leagues. Everyone's really excited about Jahmyr Gibbs. Seems to be the consensus RB2, but Kyle, you want him to go somewhere different than Denny. Where's that?
I want to see him go to the Bengals. I think, like, I know Denny pointed out a lot last year. Like, the Bengals essentially looked better with Samaje Perine. And I don't think that's a product of Samaje Perine being better than Joe Mixon. Like, maybe he's a slightly better pass catcher. He was actually a little bit worse in yards per route run. I doubt he's a better runner. Like, he's kind of a coach's friend, but not actually the most efficient back. But the reason, obviously, that they looked better when they had Samaje Perine on the field is because they were doing what I'm just going to call smart decision making, right? They were passing the football, like spreading it out more, playing more tempo when they had Samaje Perine on the field. And I'm not sure Jahmyr Gibbs would be like, oh, we have Gibbs on the field. We have to play with more tempo. We have to play like more pass heavy. But it would maybe be the other direction, that it's a sign that they actually understand how to score points, like that they should be chasing teams like the Bills, teams like the Chiefs, who, when they're at their best, do not care in the slightest about running the football. They just don't. They know that the way to win football games is to score and score and score. And when you have a lead, you can keep your foot in your opponent's throat by scoring. I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs would convince them that's the right way. I think he would be a sign that they have convinced themselves that's the right way. And we see Zach Taylor go through spells of this where, like, he'll play a 10-game stretch where they're the highest pass rate over expected team. Then he kind of falls back into his old ways. And I think maybe it would be sort of an awakening, or it would show that they've had sort of a coming to Jesus moment where they understand how to keep up with the best teams in the NFL. And Gibbs would, one, be a sign of that, but two, obviously he would play great in that. As Denny said, he's one of the best pass catchers coming out. And if you're spreading defenses out and giving him light boxes, sure, he's a guy who's just sub 200 pounds. That's fine. If you're like, of course, you can't put deep defenders in the box. You can't put a bunch of guys in the box when you have, you know, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, even Tyler Boyd. Like, that's one of the best third receivers in the league. So he's going to get the more favorable spots as a runner and get to do his best as a pass catcher. So I'm not saying like Jahmyr Gibbs would make them a better team. It would be a sign that they know how to keep up with a team like the Chiefs. And he would crush it in those circumstances. So I think that would be such an incredible fit to see. Even if, like, of course, maybe it's not the best use of resources, but it, as Denny said, would be very fun. I think Dolphins would be a very fun spot. Bengals, too, would be one. Not a terrible pick. He's a very good player, and they're not going to have to spend an early first by any means on him, but it'd be a really fun spot to watch.
The Bengals would have to use a first on him because they're not going to get him at like 58 or whatever, where their second round pick is. And also interesting to have the conversation when Joe Mixon is still on the Bengals roster right now. We have no idea if that's going to be the case, but he is still, as of April 26th, on the Bengals roster. But we'll see what happens. It's an interesting and very plausible fit. Eric, before you tell us the fit you want to see this weekend, do you have any thoughts on Jahmyr Gibbs?
Yeah, well, I'm just glad that we get to have Kyle talking about come to Jesus moments regarding running backs. It is the NFL draft. You know, I haven't had a come to Jesus moment since Denny and I were in Canton and we went to that strip mall. But that being said, yeah, absolutely. Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't like the Alvin Kamara comp as much because Alvin Kamara is 215, you know, and I do think that there's a little bit of a fallacy where people are saying, well, Alvin Kamara is dynamic, and Alvin Kamara catches passes, and he doesn't need many touches to do that. Well, he's 215, and he's a different kind of back because Gibbs is 199 is what he weighed in at, and he even kind of plays a little slight. You know, he's not going to be pounding the ball between the tackles. However, I look at Gibbs and I see like a superstar Jerick McKinnon type guy role, you know, where that perfect usage we got out of McKinnon last year in a better athlete, a better package, just a more deceptive runner, sets up his cuts. He's much better. But like if you can use him in that way, which is what Kyle's alluding to, which Denny is alluding to, like you really can have a playmaking weapon. That being said, the player that I would like to see, I'm going to go off the board. You know, they went running back. I understand, but I'm going to go in the tight end range. And I just feel like it's destiny to have a guy named Dalton go to Dallas in the honor of the great Patrick Swayze. Dalton in the Double Deuce in the greatest 80s movie known to man, Roadhouse. I feel like this was Patrick Swayze knew when he picked that role in 1987 that this was going to happen. And now here we are, 25 years later, maybe a few more than 1987. Dalton Kincaid, Utah. I think he's the best tight end in the class. You see him catching the ball outside of his frame. He's one of the few tight ends that can really stretch the seam and make a play downfield. The real comparisons you see are with Michael Mayer, right? But with Michael Mayer, we were billing him at 265 pounds, 6'4", 6'5", throughout his entire college career. He goes to the combine, checks in at 6'3", 249, 16 pounds lighter. I personally was at the combine. While I watched Darnell
brag
Washington,
much.
Sorry. But I watched Darnell Washington and Michael Mayer walking side by side, walking over to interview with Peter King at the NBC set. Darnell Washington dwarfed Michael Mayer. I mean, it's two different human beings. They don't even look like they play the same position. I'm concerned about Mayer at 249 because this is a guy I'm assuming athletically, the way he moves, which is a little boxy. He kind of doesn't catch outside of his frame as much, even though he's right on the money if it's at the numbers. But he doesn't have the dynamicism I think you're going to see from Kincaid. I want to see him go to Dallas, become the new Jason Witten, take care of the departed Schultz, and be the next great tight end in Dallas. He's going to be a premium guy in rookie drafts. He does. I think he probably slips in the top 12.
I just want to credit again, Eric, for just hammering the 35 to 45-year-old male demographic.
See, the Zoomer outreach program.
Man, we are on it today. Roadhouse, let's go.
It's supposed to be a Roadhouse sequel, I heard. A remake that's coming out. So
there always is. Probably coming to Hulu or something. Won't even be in a movie theater. This real quick reminds me of something I saw on Twitter. There's a podcast devoted to some of the stranger eras of Bob Dylan's career. It's called the Jokerman Podcast. It's a great music podcast, but they were joking that it turns out their demographic is just husbands. And we've had some of that energy on this show today. Where
we do. I don't know why.
Yeah. It's tough to say. No one.
You guys want me to come on?
No, it's not just you, Eric. We're really excelling with our husband.
Eric, you'd be surprised. This is actually the script for every show we talk about. We'll get some baseball talking here soon.
Yeah. So we're again killing it with the husband outreach. We're gonna be killing it now with that's enough positivity. I mean, let's just get back to just crushing players, who are not even professional athletes yet. Actually, we could be crushing the teams that may be ruining some of our favorite amateur athletes here. Just a fit that you're worried about might be happening this weekend. We'll start with you, Kyle Dvorchak. Just what is something that you fear might happen this weekend that you kind of just don't want to see?
Yeah, I actually have two spots. One I think is more likely for Quentin Johnston to land that would concern me about both his usage, but the way that team will be affected. The first one was the Chargers. I think they're in a prime spot to take a receiver, but I want to see them get a Zay Flowers. I want to see them get a Jordan Addison, someone who can be that reliable underneath target, still with explosive playmaking ability, specifically for Justin Herbert, because we saw last year that he had like a bottom 10 contested target rate in that he just wasn't throwing to receivers who weren't clearly open and having generated separation. And I don't really think that's who Quentin Johnston is. He's a guy who had a high percent of contested catches in college, and he tested at the combine and then at his pro day, he was like a 4.5 at his pro day, which is for his size very good, but it means he's not blowing by guys. You see some speed on tape, but ultimately I think once he adjusts, or once the NFL sort of adjusts to his speed, it will be revealed that he is more of a big body dude who's faster than he should be. But he's not a 4.4s guy. He also tested incredibly poorly in the agility drills. So I think he needs a quarterback who's willing to sort of take more old school throws, essentially is what I'd call them. This guy is big, bursty. He has the physical frame. Yeah, they're different throws. They're throws that you guys would appreciate. Being fathers, you would appreciate when a receiver has no separation and he still gets a target. And I think that might be more of what we see from Johnson. He is faster than he should be for his size and really bursty. He crushed the vertical and the broad jump, but he also tested very poorly in the agility drills. And for someone like Justin Herbert, I think he just needs to see a guy getting open and creating separation to throw. We saw that with Mike Williams, that even when Keenan Allen was out, Mike Williams really struggled to earn targets on a per route basis. I want them, even if they have to play a little bit behind Keenan Allen for a year, I want them to get the heir to that throne as opposed to sort of square peg round holing someone like Mike Williams be their number two. And I sort of feel the same way with Josh Allen, more so in that I just don't want them to try and let's do Gabe Davis again. I want them to give him a different option. But to me, it was specifically Justin Herbert and his style that stuck out. Is they need a specific receiver, and luckily for them, just about every receiver in this class outside of Quentin Johnston is 5'11 and 179. So they've got options. I just think there's one pitfall that they could fall into depending on how the board shakes out.
Yeah, we just don't want Mike Williams 2.0 in the charge, especially with Keenan Allen, probably with his last year with the team. They need someone to get open in the
that'd be a nightmare too. If they there's a pretty realistic chance that they, like you said, they move on from Keenan Allen after this year. They move into next season with just like boundary 50-50 guys, which is like the opposite of what Justin Herbert needs. Like, even if they aren't playing for 2023, they got to think more long-term than that.
Apparently no one wants anyone to end up on the Chargers, Eric, because there's a certain player you don't want to see end up in the Los Angeles Chargers. Can you tell the audience who that is?
Well, actually, it wasn't the Chargers. I wanted a player to go to the Chargers, actually. I wanted Jordan Addison. That was my prediction thing. I think Jordan Addison goes to the Chargers because he is quite literally Keenan Allen 2.0. I mean, I feel like you look at Keenan Allen, what he does. He's not fast. Keenan Allen ran like a 4.6, while Jordan Addison had a 4.37 line initially, and then he ended up running a 4.49. So I definitely want to go, and I'm all in, and that's why I certainly, am simpatico with Kyle. Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison. In my latest mock, I went Addison. That being said, if there's a place that I don't want to see somebody,
Eric, sorry, I misread the show sheet.
How dare you?
You and Denny confused me because there's a certain player that you don't want to go somewhere, but it's two different places, and I assigned Denny to yours. So you want Jordan Addison. You did say to the San Diego Chargers.
It is the San Diego Chargers as a 18-year San Diego resident. It's the San Diego Chargers.
And the fatherly vibes just continue, forgetting which town, which teams play for because they played for in the early aughts. Just the fatherly vibes.
You want Jordan Addison to be on the United States, Mexico, Baja California border. Who do you not want to end up somewhere in this draft?
Well, I've seen two different plays. I believe Lance Zierlein did it first. And then in one of the latest this week, one of those everybody picks for their team, they have like the beat writer mocks. One of the beat writers picked this same pick, and it infuriates me. And it better not happen because Bijan Robinson is not going to my beloved New England Patriots at 14. Okay? That's not happening. I can't believe that people think this is a thing. We've already got 5'11", 245, Ramondre Stevenson, who it's year 3. It's time. It's his time. Let's go. Unleash the shackles. Let him roll. And you're going to bring in Bijan Robinson, who's, he's great, but we have 2 of those guys now? Like, it's not even like you're bringing in Jahmyr Gibbs as a satellite back to kind of balancing him off with. You're bringing in Bijan. What does that do to Ramondre Stevenson? I don't get that. 2, who's blocking for Bijan Robinson and Ramondre Stevenson? You guys have watched a little bit of the Patriots, I know. I mean, when you've been forced to.
Well, Denny's never watched a game, but yeah.
I hope not. But he's looked at the offensive line statistics, and it wasn't pretty last year by any objective measure on that offensive line. If you're going to go and get a running back, you went and traded up for Cole, or you traded down and you took Cole Strange a full round early last year. Look, take the offensive lineman that the Patriots like. Don't overthink this. There's plenty of running backs you can go and look at in the second round. I don't know why you need to. I feel like you're creating, you're filling a need that doesn't exist. So please go offensive lineman, Patriots.
That smoke has been billowing, by the way. The Pats and Bijan.
I will say, you mentioned, I can't believe this team that took Cole Strange in the first round would make an illogical decision in the draft. I simply can't put these dots together. I think you just did.
You did.
But he's an offensive line reach. They love doing that. The skill player reach is not their thing. Especially, I hope not wide receiver with their.
There aren't a lot of things that would make me more upset than Bijan Robinson being drafted by the Patriots. I can probably count them on one hand. I mean, things in general in the world.
It's true, and there's a lot going on in this world right now. I don't know if you folks have heard. And one of the reasons I was confused about Eric's pick and now Denny's pick is because they were both talking about the same teams and then the same player.
Yeah,
I was conflating a million things in my head. Bijan Robinson. He is the skill player in this draft, but we don't want him to go to the Patriots. And where else do we not want Bijan Robinson to go?
we don't want to go into the Chargers, folks,
To the
because
Baja California, San Diego.
because look, I mean, he like that, and this is supposing that Austin Eckler is going to play with the Chargers this year, even though he seemingly doesn't really want to. He wants a new contract. The Chargers are like, whatever, dude, you're gonna have to play it out. And Eckler being a pass catching dynamo, like he's not going to give up that role. So okay, Bijan Robinson becomes maybe an early down option. That just stinks. Like for fantasy, that stinks. It's the same thing. We have a blurb today on Dan Graziano from ESPN reporting that the Ravens could be in on Bijan Robinson if he falls outside the top 10. The Ravens could trade up and draft him soon after, I'm guessing after the top 10. That would also stink. I just wanted to mention that because J.K. Dobbins is not going anywhere. Also, J.K. Dobbins was really good and productive and efficient in the final month and a half of last season. So we do not want our Bijan going to the Ravens, and we don't want to go to the Chargers.
Real quick, around the horn, for a while we were setting the Bijan line at like 19.5. I'd say we should set it at 9.5. Is Bijan going in the top 10? Eric Froton.
I mocked him to Philadelphia, where he is plus 300 odds. I know that he is plus 200 to go to Atlanta. I believe he's essentially the favorite, or I think he's number 2 in that pecking order. But when you hear things like the NFC is objectively terrified of Philadelphia getting Bijan Robinson, I get excited about that. So I think, we're talking about going in the top 10. I wouldn't have thought that possible probably a month ago, but look, premium talent is what it is. And he is a premium talent who is every bit what they say he is. So if Todd Gurley can go number 10, why can't Bijan?
And it's the Eagles too, who are think they're in like an imperial phase. Basically, they've got another first-round pick. Why not make a luxury pick? Why not make it Bijan? Number 10, producer Adam points out the over/under at Mini Sportsbook appears to be 12.5. So it's definitely possible from a betting perspective. He's going to end up in the top 10. Kyle, what do you think? Top 10 or not top 10 for Bijan?
Yeah, not only that, but Adam also has minus 250 the under because you capture Houston, who I've seen a few times mocked to get him. You capture obviously Philly, and then for me in my latest and probably final mock draft, Atlanta. They're doing it. They're doing the thing that we are like, there's no way they do it. There's no way they do such a thing. Tyler Algier was so efficient. I mean, and the running scheme, even Caleb Huntley and Cordell Patterson, there's no way. Of course they're doing it. Anytime you think about the Falcons,
they've already done it, actually.
They have. Yeah. Think about the thing you don't want the Falcons to do, and the thing that if the Falcons did such a thing, it would make you furious. They're doing it. That's it. They're doing it. So yes, I have Bijan to Atlanta in my latest mock.
Yeah.
Denny, what are the vibes? You're our vibes, man. What do you think the vibes are?
My vibes-based analysis says Arthur Smith cannot physically pass on Bijan Robinson.
No.
He will go into cardiac arrest. We don't want that, and so he's going to pick Bijan Robinson.
He will not be departing the state of Missouri without Bijan Robinson. And yes, by the way, Kansas City's in Missouri. Bet you didn't know that, huh? Yeah, most people do know that, and it's when people don't know that it's very funny, and they think it's in Kansas. It is admittedly confusing. Our final segment is predictions for what we think is going to happen. Eric, I want you to start thinking of a second prediction. You're going to go last. We accidentally used up your prediction in the last segment. Think of something crazy to say to end the show. We'll begin with Denny's prediction. What is your prediction for draft weekend?
I just from grinding the blurbs, folks, I get the overriding sense that the Lions are going to come away with Anthony Richardson one way or another. Okay. I whether it's very early or in the late first round, depending on, where other quarterbacks land. I don't believe Dan Campbell and the Lions brass when they say we're good with Jared Goff for the long term. I don't believe that. I think this is a team that will do anything to score points and to win. And Anthony Richardson, as we've said many, many times over the past however many years we've been covering this draft, Anthony Richardson is an amazing prospect. And really, really, look, if you and I don't know, Eric, correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but the issues with the short area passing, according to folks in the know, are very fixable, and they can be kind of smoothed over time. So I don't think teams should be necessarily too worried about that. I think the Lions get Richardson.
Eric has some breaking Richardson thoughts that he's going to share with us here.
Well, actually, I mean, I appreciate Denny using the phrase "one way or another." Well-known Blondie tune.
I knew you were going to get that.
I really appreciate that, Denny. Thank you. That being said, yeah, I think you make a good point about AR. He's 20 years old still.
Yeah.
Right? When you look at the art of projecting QBs, the reason why Bill Parcells, Belichick, and those guys, and the old heads, we're keeping it 80s and 90s today. The reason why they like quarterbacks that are a little bit longer in the tooth or have had 3 years of starting experience is you can see how they react in pressure situations. You can see what needs to be done. You can see what needs to be fixed, and you can identify that and really, go through it and scout them and parse their skills. It's hard when you have somebody only started 13 games, 1 year starter. The footwork is certainly, all over the place at times. But he has those raw tools that are they're the most tantalizing athletic traits that any quarterback's ever had in the history of the combine.
Right.
So with all that, the big arm is legit. It's just a matter of settling him in, getting him comfortable, allowing him to feel, the rush around him, step up, and just get into that comfort zone. I think he needs a full year. Denny, I understand why you went with him at 6. You got the Jared Goff plan and then the handoff. I'm going just one spot later. I think the Raiders take him. And if the Raiders do be at 7, I actually love, from a gambling perspective, he's currently plus 1,100, Anthony Richardson, to be taken at that 7 spot by the Raiders. I think that's great value. It's great odds. And if you look at the Jimmy G experiment, I know that Las Vegas is going to want to get out of the Jimmy G experiment within a year. They need a jumping off point here. I think that with Mark Davis, we've seen how the Raiders draft from their id. Okay, Alex Leatherwood, here he is. Henry Ruggs, he ran fast. So I see the Raiders being absolutely enamored with the physical traits, the package that he has, the upside. Put him under Josh McDaniels. Let him sit under the learning tree and go. So that is what I would like. That's my prediction. I am at odds with my friend.
I hope for his sake he's not drafted by the Raiders.
Me too. I mean, the Raiders like to take big swings though, and Josh McDaniels, is quite literally the man who took Tim Tebow in the first round. So we know he's willing to go off board, and you wouldn't actually be going off board with Anthony Richardson. Do you think? So it seems like we think he's going in the top 10. So we're basically saying 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the top 10. So I kind of think this is really interesting. And Anthony Richardson to Seattle might be the best for his career, or maybe Detroit too, because maybe he would sit for a year. I do think so. The NFL seems to be believing in the sit for a year model again, and it certainly stands to reason. Anthony Richardson, it might be a bet. I know you learn by playing, but it just almost be unfair after 13 pretty uneven college games. Hey, guess what? The Sharks, you're gonna be thrown to them. Have fun. It seemed like he could maybe benefit from the sitting a year model, especially a stable franchise like Seattle, or a franchise against all odds becoming more stable in Detroit. Raiders, not so much, though. That would be very, very concerning if he ended up there. But yeah, 20 years old, that athletic package, there's no way that's getting outside the top 10. There just isn't. Kyle, to end the show, what is your prediction for what's going to happen on draft weekend?
I've got another quarterback sitting, runway to starting next year prediction. It is by hook or by crook, and Hooker to the Vikings. I don't know. I doubt they have to move up to get him. I know we've seen more buzz from pundits that he could go early in the first. I think really the realistic buzz they're getting is that he's a guy in that Lamar Jackson territory where maybe they want that they want the 5th-year option tacked onto his contract. He's a quarterback, and that's really valuable for a guy like him, for the flexibility that gives that team, and his production profile at Tennessee was just unreal. I mean, one of the most efficient quarterbacks in college football. It was pretty on track for a Heisman before tearing his ACL, and that probably means he has to sit behind someone. That means he's not going to, or at least a team that needs a quarterback right away, is not loving that they're getting him because they're probably losing a bunch of games until he's ready. Because not only is he coming back from the knee injury, but he played in an offense that admittedly really did him a lot of favors, boosting his stats. And I still think he was like physically capable of making throws at all levels of the field, but he wasn't asked with doing as much like cognitively. He just wasn't processing as much. He was having more open receivers than most quarterbacks. That's perfect. Get him in an offense. We'll get him essentially on a team that he probably doesn't have to start in the entirety of the 2023 season. And that is the Minnesota Vikings are taking him when they pick at 24, something like that. They could probably even trade back, but I think if you want a quarterback, you're just taking him there, right? Kirk Cousins, a free agent in the upcoming off season. And I think that relationship has been more, let's play it year by year. And finally, they have an off ramp. They haven't had really a chance. Like, this past offseason, what do they do to get out of Kirk Cousins? They're bombing. They're playing for a future season. Whereas you understand with the roster they have, why they'd say, let's try and make the smooth transition. Let's try and get from what is a good but not great roster, despite their record last year, a good but not great roster. Let's keep that ball rolling with potentially a higher ceiling quarterback. So I think they take Hooker. He probably sits for most of his rookie season. But that's good. The team is set up perfectly for that type of player.
We'll find out if it's actually a good roster or not. And I would say the first step to addressing your Kirk Cousins problem is admitting you have a Kirk Cousins problem. The Vikings have found very, very hard to do.
According to the marketplace, right now on DraftKings, Mr. Hendon Hooker is plus 350, the favorite to go to Minnesota. So Kyle might be onto something here.
The one thing with Hooker in Minnesota, I mean, he might have to sit his whole first year anyway because of the ACL. But if you go to somewhere like Minnesota where he probably would sit no matter what the whole first year, that means he'd be 26 when he finally started an NFL game. And
that's probably true of most of the places he goes, though, other than like, I don't know, he could go a place where he gets in a few games at the end of the season, but I don't think he has a meaningful rookie season. You wouldn't say he's like a guy who's coming in to lead his team to the playoffs after like the starter goes, 0-3 or whatever. I think at best he has sort of the Jalen Hurts rookie season where Hurts wasn't because of injury, but it was just that he wasn't quite ready yet. And I think that's what you get is maybe you get a little sneak preview at the end of the season, but
I think probably true Hurts
anywhere.
I think like Hurts, he's going to go in the second round. A whole lot different situation than Jalen Hurts, but the fact that, pretty much anyone takes him, he's going to be 26 years old before he starts a game for your team. And I just don't know if you can justify a first-round pick on that. Can we justify ending this show? Did we get it all
I think we
out?
can justify it. I'd say we can.
Did we get it all out? Yeah, we did. We threw so many extended so many olive branches to our Zoom generation.
Yeah, I have more thoughts on Roadhouse, but I guess we can get to that later.
I have more questions about Patrick Swayze. Who is he? That's it. That's the question.
First off, God rest his soul. He is no longer with us, Kyle. And so
I honestly didn't know that.
Yeah, he's no. Hope you feel happy about that.
I hope you're gonna go and watch.
I think we can justify ending the show, guys. I think we can justify ending the show.
You could, yeah.
Okay.
May God rest Patrick Swayze's soul.
Just do me a favor. There was this book that a lot of people read of our generation in the middle school. It was called The Outsiders. Go and watch that movie. You'll know who Patrick Swayze is.
So be with Patrick Swayze. God rest our souls for draft season finally breaking us on this podcast. And just get here, NFL Draft It. Will, Thursday night, we're going to have every blurb written up on the NBC Sports Edge and Rotoworld all weekend. We're going to have that. Final mock drafts, lots of stuff from Eric. Eric, what do you have on the site this week, by the way, and this weekend?
Well, I just went over my gambling analysis, a full soup to nuts of the first round, giving pretty much every relevant line related to what those teams could be doing, as well as the player sort of marketplace. So I got 4,000 words on that. Enjoy. And then on Thursday night, I will be writing up a round 2 or 3 mock based off of the first round. And we'll have that up by Friday morning for you all, since I'm on the West Coast, and I'll get it up late night.
There you go. It's going to be an overwhelming amount of content on the website the next 2 days. I'm going to have a round 1 recap. So please check it out. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. For Denny Carter, Kyle Dvorchak, Eric Froton, I'm Patrick Daugherty.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, respectfully, okay? Respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.